Hi there, Falcons. Welcome to our first flipped video. It's going to be about what is history. So, a little precursor info for us before we get started. You found the movie. Step one, check. Now, to make this as painless as possible, what I've done is the only thing you have to write down, I've put in red. So if it's not in red, don't bother with it. You don't have to write it down. Remember, this is a movie. So if I'm going too fast for you, you can hit pause, you can rewind. You can hit pause and let your dog out. You can hit pause and go get something to drink. You're completely in charge. You're in control of how fast or how slow, how many times you watch this. It's completely up to you. So let's get started. We're going to talk about historians. And historians do a couple different things. Historians, we like to analyze things. We analyze, we interpret, we compare, we contrast. And one of the main things we look at in this is sources. There's two different kinds of sources, primary sources and secondary sources. And what we're going to do today is look at the difference between the two. So get your pens and pencils ready, because here comes something you need to write down. A primary source, write it down. A primary source is an original record. The word primary means first. So this is kind of how I remember the difference between the two. Primary sources came first. They were made at the time of the event. So there's all kinds of different examples. Newspapers, letters, photos, artifacts. All of those things are primary sources. An artifact is anything. It's stuff. Something you can touch and hold on to. So a quilt that your grandma made, that would be an artifact. Okay, let's use a hypothetical. Let's say that it's the first week of school, and I'm not encouraging you to do this in any way, shape, or form. Let me be clear there. But let's say there's a food fight in the cafeteria. There's food flying all over the place. What's the first thing kids are going to do? They're going to whip out their cell phones, right? They're going to start rolling video, taking pictures, and before you know it, it's going to be on Facebook and YouTube and all over the net in 2.5 seconds flat. Those pictures, that video, those are all primary sources. On top of that, that kid who starts the food fight, those kids involved in the food fight, they're ending up in Kelowna's office. We all know that. Don't go there. So those referrals that were written, they're going to be official records. Any kind of document that is created by something like a school or a police station or a court of law, those are all official records. On the flip side, we have secondary sources. Second comes later. Secondary sources try to explain primary sources. They're created after the event. So your textbook is a great example of a secondary source. The people that wrote it are old, but they weren't around for the Civil War. So they're explaining what happened in the past. If we go back to our food fight example, let's say come middle of January when they're putting together the yearbook, they decide to do a spread about the big food fight the first week of school. That spread in the yearbook could be seen as a secondary source. It's trying to explain what happened during that event. So you can see primaries first, secondary second, comes later. Now, there's something that we have to be aware of when we look at sources, and that's called bias. Bias is when your opinion slips into a source. Sometimes it's on purpose, most of the time it just slips in. We're talking about your point of view. Now, if we talk to the kid who started the food fight, he's going to have one story, right? The kid who got barbecue sauce all over his brand new favorite shirt, he's going to have another story to tell. And if we bring in Mr. Kelowna and Mr. Shear, who had to break up the whole thing, they're going to completely have a different side to that story. So bias is when your point of view kind of, how do I put it, slips in, and you don't have really the objective view that you might have if you weren't involved in the event. So there we go, Falcons. That's your first homework in a nutshell. I'll see you next time.